Hi, I'm Danya,
And I'm Shaheen.
and you're listening to or watching
Reality Woo Woo.
It's Not Something to Believe in.
It's something to talk about.
And on today's episode, we're so excited to welcome Daniel Cruz to the podcast. Thank you for joining
Welcome.
us.
Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you for the applause. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I'm so excited
We're
It
to be with
so
you
is.
excited.
guys.
It really is.
It really is. I blew off work for this. If my employer is listening, no, you're not.
No, you didn't. No, they'll have no idea
absolutely
when
not.
we recorded this because this is
No.
part of the Solstice Series. We're inviting
Yeah.
incredible creatives like you on just to chit chat about our favorite stuff, astrology and creativity, and how these are basically the same thing. I mean, that's how I describe them to myself.
It's all one.
Really. When you sent over the brief and with the Solstice series kind of outlined in the concept and the guest, A, I was honored to be included. And B, it's just so fun because I agree, it's literally the one. And it's something so fun to be able to speak to so many people who have that passion and interest in both areas. So
Yeah. I feel like
Love it.
Well, we're happy you're here. And yes, I feel like it was just like a natural progression. I feel like you and I are always chit-chatting about astrology, and I was like, okay, this is the perfect moment to like let other people hear us talk about it. Which is fun.
Yeah, giving people a glimpse into our DMs on Instagram.
Into our DMs. Yeah, this is our DMs come to life for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love for you to just introduce yourself a little bit to the audience, and maybe we can chit chat about how we know each other. Which I was trying to remember. It's just PR, right? It's like our PR backgrounds, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, PR backgrounds and mutual friends. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, a little on me. So my name is Daniel.
Hello.
I'm a graphic designer. I have a sordid working history. We can get into that on the astrology of it all. But currently I'm working as a creative content manager for growth marketing. So really focusing on the development and execution of paid content. I'm really loving that because at the moment I get to really blend what I like to say is like left side, right brain stuff. So either I'm reviewing performance data and kind of looking at all the trends in which we can leverage, and then really opening up that Figma and just start pushing pixels around. So it's something I've been really enjoying. Yeah,
that's really cool. I just want to talk about myself for a second and say that I used to do that and I hated it and it sucked at it because there's so much information that has to go into it. So I actually do applaud you for doing that.
Thank you.
It was really hard.
I feel like you exist on a spectrum between Shaheen and I of like we were like publicist, and then Daniel migrated over to like pixel pusher, designer, creative director. Like,
and I'm on that side.
Closer to that side. Yeah.
Fun. It's fun. What is not life if you're not running between two ends of the spectrum? So
right. Yeah, and getting paid to do so.
That's exactly right.
That's the most important part. That's the most important part. Thinking about your astrology first, I was a little bit, I know that you're a Sag, which does make sense that you're like good at a lot of things and like creative and just like flowing, and that's the fun piece. But
one
when I
career to the next.
Yeah, exactly. Just like flitting from one to the next and being like, this is
I'm
fun.
bored.
I'm bored.
Let's try something new.
Yeah, I can be good at everything.
Obviously, I'm ruled by Jupiter. Wouldn't you be? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let me just expand in all directions.
That is Sag energy.
Yes.
But I was surprised with like the rest of your chart a little bit. So we'll do a full breakdown. But your big three: Sun in Sag, your moon is in Aquarius, which is cute, and your ascendant is in Cancer. So fire, air, water. We get like a nice, well-rounded mix. And just kind of looking at that, do you like, has astrology always been sort of a part of your life, or is it something you got into later? I'm just like curious to what your long-term relationship with astrology has been.
My LTR with the stars.
Exactly.
Well, growing up, my mom is a Virgo moon, so she is the definition of like a kitchen witch. She is granola, she is crunchy. We never were that into astrology, but she's 100% psychic. She is like a dream interpreter. Like she is that like bruja that's like OG. So it wasn't like, it was a natural progression. It was around like, I think 2015 that, someone asked me my moon sign and I was like, oh, what's that? And then it was really just a spiral from there, just like picking up every book, downloading every app, and just like really getting into it. And my best friend, she is just as into astrology as I am, just steeped. So we have different interest areas when it comes to astrology, and like we always like share book recommendations or like different timing techniques if we're like looking at like predictive stuff. So it's really fun. And since really then it's just like gone deeper and deeper, and then it starts to just like permeate into whether it be your work or your personal life, where my partner now knows like if it's a new moon or a full moon, I'm in the living room doing my lunar ritual. So Netflix is off, the candles are on. So,
moon ritual and chill.
Yeah, literally, I'm making moon water. Please leave the kitchen. But so it's kind of just only took a couple of years.
Your crystals.
That's exactly right. Yeah, just dancing in the moonlight.
I love that, and I feel like that's it's the same, sort of the same with me a little bit of like, for me, it was like always in my life, but then, there's definitely been a steep ramp up, I would say, over the last like 10 years of like learning more and more. And I can really distinctly remember, obviously I've always been really connected to like being a Virgo is like, I would say is like a core part of my personality. But then, I was sitting outside of House of Intuition, the one in Silver Lake, and just like sitting on the porch after getting like a tarot reading from someone, just chit chatting with, of course, So LA. He's like a rapper, actor, whatever. And he's just like, we were like talking about our entire chart for like an hour and a half, me and this stranger. And I was like, okay, like I'm really invested in this now, like trying to learn kind of the rest of my chart. And
it's a connection point. It allows conversation and like connection between strangers. That's why I like it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Daniel too, actually, in that, like, what do you like about astrology? We had a guest the other day who was like, I love monthly horoscopes, but really lately I'm into placements. And I personally like the personality attributes and like how people fit in with that. But what do you like about astrology?
I love to whip it out as a party trick. No, it's
I suck at that. I'm never able to guess people's sign.
It's always the cynics who want the party trick, because they're always like, well, guess my sign. And I'm like, I met you 30 seconds ago. I don't even know your I actually don't even know your name.
It's a Scorpio thing to say.
Yeah, they're like, oh, well, of course you'd say that. I think when I first really got into it was like the personality of it all, because of course, like you learn about your moon and then you learn about your ascendant, and you're like, wow, that tracks. And then you start to like share and like really see how that shapes across all 12 signs and the placements within the houses. And you're like, okay, let me get deeper. As of late, I would say for the past year, I've really been into more of like the predictive techniques. So diving into more like perfection years, like solar return charts, monthly perfections, progressed moons or progressed rising. So really starting to get into like that more like predictive side of astrology, which I never thought I would, but it's something that I've been definitely reading more about lately. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I always try to avoid that too, but now that you're saying it, I'm glad I asked. I'm like, it's so interesting how different people use astrology in different ways, and maybe it's based on like where we're at in life or what we're interested in at the time, but that's interesting.
For me, I think it really stems from anxiety, just being like inherently like an anxiety, like an anxious person. And that's why I think I have to sometimes, yes, and it's hard because being so anxious, I sometimes have to step back from the astrology of it all, because I will be looking at my solar return chart for like 2032 and be like, oh great, I have an eclipse on my like on my, literally I'll be like deep in my solar return chart of 2032 when this is no joke, there is an eclipse on my moon. And I'm like, that's it. And I'm like, okay, you're so
it's
far
over
ahead.
For me in 2032.
I'm
this reality won't even be anywhere. I mean, first of all, we're in the fucking age of Aquarius. Like, I can't even envision what 2032 is gonna look like. Truly, none of us can. It's like beyond comprehension, truly. But I totally commiserate with you on the anxiety piece of shit, because like sometimes I have to like kind of like self-regulate and be like, you know what, you can't check your horoscope today because I get to like letting it dictate what will what my day will be like. And I don't know. I mean,
1000%.
particularly April really kicked me in the ass this year. And so I think it kicked a lot of it's just like the lunar eclipse and the retrograde, and just it was a lot. So yeah, I think sometimes I have to like back away from it. But I do think not as far ahead as you are in terms of like looking that far in the future.
A whole decade.
But yeah, but I am interested in the world, right? I very much have like moved beyond using astrology just for like my personal stuff, and kind of being able to just have a framework for understanding like everything that's happening around us constantly, because it is a lot, I think. But it's such an ancient like guide to that, and being like, these are like cycles of civilization, like this is what it is, you know.
Yeah, it's a global thing. I also like to just you go.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask, was that interest peaked when Pluto moved into Aquarius, being more of like the sign of like the collective? Was that kind of that same timing?
Interesting question.
I would say yes and no. I think I really started kind of looking at those cycles maybe 2030, because that, or 2020, because, but that's when I turned 30. So these two things are kind of together, is that I was like wrapping up my Saturn return, and the world kind of turned on its side, and all of these things kind of happened at once, where I was like, oh, this all makes sense. Even understanding Pluto in Capricorn and what we have lived through from 2008 to now was really, really in the banks collapsing, just like seeing those big historical moments through this lens, I think has been really, really helpful. And also has opened me up to, like I was saying about 2032, like we have no idea what it's going to be like. And that's scary, but kind of exciting to me, I think.
Totally. It's I have to remember, like, sometimes experiencing a transit is going to be obviously more accurate, but much better for yourself than trying to predict what the transit is going to kind of transpire as. And like sometimes being retrospective in your astrological observation is a lot better for learning, because you can be like, okay, all these transits happened last week. What happened for me personally? Rather than, okay, all these transits are next week. This is what I think is going to happen. So it's like almost that retrospective.
Creating a world for yourself, like based on expectations. You're reminding me though, I did something similar for years. Danya, you remember this too. I would say I can't wait until like 2023 for my birthday, because that's when Jupiter has, like, for a couple of years I was following Jupiter go from Aries to Pisces into Taurus. But then a couple months later I got fired from a job that I didn't really like anyways. So it was interesting to acknowledge what happens through those things, because I actually love my job now. I'm so happy. So it did bring me through a different chain of events that I thought, but you're right, retrospective helps.
I am personally on a campaign to rebrand, in which how a lot of people speak about like Jupiter and Saturn, and like Jupiter always being so positive and expansive and abundant and like the good daddy of the sky, and Saturn is gonna like put you on your knees and like make you beg for like you know, karma or whatever. Because I had started thinking about this. For me, 2 years ago, Jupiter was going to cross my MC and be conjunct my degree. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is the career that I'm going to love. Like, I'm fine. And like my MC's in Pisces. So like Jupiter being there, I'm like, this is all stacking up. Like, this is all systems go. I did get a job. That job for the full year was the most overworked, most stressed, broke me. I was like so unwell. I quit after a little over a year. And I was like, yes. And then after it crossed my MC's in the 9th house, it entered my 10th house. And during when Jupiter was in my 10th house, that's when my career was so overloaded and so overbearing. And I lost a balance of my work life. And then once Saturn is conjunct my MC right now by degree, like Saturn's right there. And now I'm in this job that I love. And like I learned boundaries from when Jupiter crossed over my MC. And now Saturn's almost like that solve going over and being like, yeah, you can do it all, but is it worth doing it all? Like you can have boundaries, you can have like restrictions, like that's okay.
I read once that somewhere in something that children like Jupiter because it's fun and free, but adults end up liking Saturn more and more and disliking Jupiter, because Jupiter brings chaos to an adult and Saturn brings structure. So it's a perspective.
Great way of looking at it.
No, that's really
You're just
really,
proving
really
it though.
Yeah.
I was like lived case study.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Astrology is real. Done.
Done.
All right.
The podcast is over. We can wrap this
thanks
up.
for tuning in, guys. Yeah.
Facts.
I mean, kind of along those lines and being in the job that you're in now, I'm really curious about do you, as a creative, like do you create outside of your 9 to 5, and what are you making right now, either in that 9 to 5 or outside of it, that's exciting you?
Jokes. I am making jokes when I'm not on the clock. I'm just actually kind of. I love this is gonna be so sun Sag. I love to make memes, and this is so dumb, but like I love a good meme. I have the Photoshop skills, I have the After Effects skills. Like I have the broken brain. Like I can literally just make a meme and throw it in the group chat and like get a haha reaction, and I'm like, my work here's done.
And that was like, worth it for you.
Yeah, and be like, that. Who do I build those hours to? No, that's honestly, because it's like shit posting to me is a way to be creative in a low stakes way. Whereas my job,
Sagittarius line of thinking, and
because like when I'm doing like content or graphic design and social and like paid, like it has to be smart and calculated and precise, and like that's all well and good. But like sometimes I just want to like Photoshop someone's face on like a can of beans.
Yeah.
Like
sometimes you just have an idea you want to share.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm hearing your Aquarius Moon. Actually, that's what I'm. The like inanity and just like I'm hearing that for sure. But as you're saying, both of my 2 of my siblings are Sagittarius. Actually, 3 of them, but the 2 older ones, like I would say we primarily communicate via internet content. Like that's kind of it. Like that's how we connect, that's how we let each other know what's happening in our lives. Like it's straight up just through sharing like reels and TikToks with each other that I like, and I feel very connected to them, but that's the language 100%. That they speak. And I'm a Sag rising, so like it's chronically online. It's like it's a very dialed in language, which I really enjoy. I love that.
I love that.
What's it like being like a professional creator? And we talked about it. You kind of went from the like, and being a publicist is so fucking type A. It's so irritating, right? To then moving over into this like creative space. How, and this is something I've talked about in some past episodes, is like I had to consciously like put on a different identity, like to walk away and be like, you're not just like a comms person, you're a writer. And then from there I had to go, and you're a creative. Like I've had to like put on different hats literally to just like feel into these spaces. So I'm curious how you like navigated that transition in your career.
Yeah, well, I mean, those transitional stepping stones are fundamental. And I think it's so hard when we're in it being like, man, I'm not making moves, I'm not making gains, but like just that like active decision to decide that, you know what, I am a writer is truly like you are embarking on the direction that you eventually want to end up in. So I think for me, and this is, I can relate it all back to astrology at the end, but I was a publicist.
Can't we all?
I mean, at the end of the day, I was a publicist working in like TV releases, movie releases, like straight up entertainment, big city lights, Hollywood, and then eventually like in the brand sector. And then once I got to an agency in which I had a little bit more integrated accounts, I started to be like, I had creative people on my team. I was like, you know, I much more enjoy the creative side of things. And
I'm more creative than the creative people. Like doesn't the light bulb go off at a certain point where you're like, hold on a second?
You're like, wait, that's your idea you're pitching to the client? Like, I'm the client now. So I think, and I had an amazing mentor. Her name's Fairfax. If you listen to this, shout out Fairfax. She really advocated for me to make the transition from publicist to the creative team. I went back to night school to refresh all of my chops in like Adobe Creative Suite and all of that. And then just slowly, I was a hybrid for a while. I was still doing PR, account lead, and like graphic design accounts. So that was fucking bananas. And eventually, slowly but surely, then I was like a creative project manager. And then I like started doing more like motion stuff and like back into like my creative seat. So it's been a slow transition. And my MC is mutable, my sun is mutable. Like I've had like 1,000 different jobs. I was a product manager for a little bit, working at a tech company. Like what? And the reason I say this all goes back to astrology is Pluto is in my 5th house, right? So I had the hardest time coming to the realization that I am a creative, because with Pluto there, it was like I had to completely deconstruct my concept of my professional identity to allow myself to actually be creative. And like I have a Capricorn stellium, so like I love the structure of it all. The publicity side, really, my Mercury is in Capricorn, so like I really was like, this is the life for me. Like I'm on Good Morning America at 5 a.m. Put me in the hot seat. We have some crisis. Like let me write a statement. But then I was like, this is not fulfilling me. Like as much as I love like the creativity of like creative comms, like I need to shit post and make memes. So like I think that was like the transition of it all.
I need more mediums, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, and that's how I totally hear that, is like writing is the backbone, will always be the backbone, because it is structure, and it's really, astrology is a language. Language is it. Like it's how we communicate. It's super important. But then yes, I just needed other ways to express myself. I needed like a meme, and I needed social, and I needed podcasts, and I needed other avenues to like get more of it out, to be more of myself fully, if that makes sense.
And like what I love about astrology is like we're fed these like preconceived notions, and we're so programmed to think by like 30 you're gonna have it all figured out, you're gonna be in the top of your tippy top career, and like that's it, retire. But when you look at it through an astrological lens, and like how slowly some of these outer planets take to move between the houses, and how long it takes to have certain returns or like aspects, you're like, you know, like I haven't really lived that long, and like I've experienced so much. And like now I can just make a calculated decision that's based through experience on like what I want to do next, and take all of my learnings to date and like cobblestone something together that's actually going to be fulfilling, like regardless of like the money I'm making, the title I have, the prestige that's like seen through like a like society's lens. And I think that's what astrology really helps put into like a nice little package for you.
To your point too, I feel like adults in the past used to get to a point where they did finish, like mentally. They were like, I got my job, I got my things, and like, oh, we were good. But I feel like it showed too, because I saw this meme recently where it was like, look at the cast of Cheers, and they were all like 28 and 30, but they look like 40 in my mind. They're like Kelsey Grammer was younger than me in those episodes of Cheers, and it ages you, I guess. Like he looks younger now because the future just did something to us. I don't know. Perspective gave us youth.
That meme is shocking.
Yeah,
it's also crazy how people in that era would like be at one job for 30 years. They're like, I climbed my way up from an associate, and now I'm the president of the world, and I literally bought a house, had 5 kids, and like 100 cars on like a $30,000 or like a $30,000 salary. So
yeah,
I don't know if it's like we're just like awash in it, right? Because like that sounds so boring to me. Like that just doesn't. I don't know. They would have had to.
As a Taurus, that sounds kind of nice. I'm not gonna lie. Just having a big ass house, paying very little for all those cars and room. I like it.
I mean, you made a really good point, Daniel, that I wanted to is like how long transits are, and how we really haven't even been alive that long. And I've been, I like to speak astrology, and then I like to speak like personal brand language. And I've been talking about like slingshot theory of like, you come into a situation and you're like, okay, all systems go, really excited. But then inevitably there's a backtrack. And this is like either, in the cycle of like a project that you're managing, or like you're stepping into a new role. There's a little bit of time there where you're kind of going retrograde, essentially, where you're like, oh shit, what did I get myself into? Is this right? I don't know. And then you launch forward, and it's better and it's faster, and you have learned a ton, and you're different in that process. But that's all part of it, and it's very natural. But in that retrograde, we're always like, is change real? Is anything ever going to be different? Like, am I like, that's that moment where you're just like, this is all nonsense. I can't believe I'm here, right?
Totally. I think growing up, you come to appreciate retrogrades, which is so funny. And in that same slingshot theory, you realize and value the ability to like look back, reflect, glean whatever you need to like fix or optimize, and then like go back forward. And like that time is appreciated. Like I love when things slow down
necessary.
during Mercury retrograde. Yeah, and maybe it's because I have Mercury retrograde and Mars retrograde and Jupiter retrograde natally in my chart. But like when Mercury retrograde comes up, I'm like, great, let's all slow down. I could love to like clean my desktop and empty my recycling bin and then like figure out how to do things better.
Yeah.
To that point, do you ever have any transits that you love? Like I personally, every time Moon is in Pisces, I feel like the world hates it, but I love it because my moon is in Pisces, so I feel like other people's sensitivities are things that I feel all the time. I don't know if you feel that way about any transits.
That I love.
No pressure. You could think about it too.
I don't think one pops out right now. Truly. I think being a Cancer rising and ruled by the moon, I feel like having your chart ruler change signs every 2 to 3 days is so rough that I need to be better. I need to be better at keeping a moon journal because I should have a better sense on like how am I feeling certain days when the moon is in certain like signs, but I don't, and that's something that I've always wanted to do. But I think for me, it becomes too real at that point where I'm like, yes, I'm a Cancer rising. Yes, my chart ruler is going to change signs in the next 24, 48 hours or 36, 48 hours. Do I really want to know like what I'm expecting, quotation marks for the listeners at home? So it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And when you were talking about earlier, like using astrology to kind of look back, right? To like teach yourself that way. I am my own like little science project that way because I've been journaling every day for at least a decade. And so I can literally just go back and be like, how was I feeling on, May 6th of 2017 and sort of looking at it. And it's so reassuring usually because I'm like, oh, the little bullshit I was worried about like I've not even thought about this person. I don't even know like what those little anxieties were. And I feel like it always snaps me back into the present moment of like, it's fine. You're gonna be absolutely fine.
It does help put it into perspective.
Yeah. I'm curious, like now, we've talked a little bit about the identity of becoming a professional creative. How do you sort of manage your work? You said you integrate like left brain, right brain, which I find really interesting. But yeah, I'm curious do you find under like stress you lean in a certain direction? Because I become way more like dictator when I'm under stress. I lean way analytical. I go back to the publicist part of me. I'm like, we need a tighter schedule, like instead of like loosening my grip.
Oh, that is my core identity, is that like we need a tighter schedule. I live and die by the calendar. Like it has to be on the calendar or it doesn't exist. I will never get rid of that. I have timers for things. I have like both a digital and a like handwritten to-do list because if I write it down with my hand, I have a better like time like retaining it or it's of like importance.
Yeah.
I feel like this trait is very much an Aquarius moon trait where like when shit hits the fan or things start to become really overwhelming, I retreat inside myself and I get really quiet, really focused because I'm like, I'm the only one who can do this in the sense of like, I don't want to burden others and like, I need to just like lock it down. And that's what I do. I try to be softer and better about it, but I'm the same as you. Like, I'm like, it needs to be a tighter schedule. I need to wake up earlier. I need to go to bed later. Like my working
the solution
day
is work harder.
Yeah,
the solution is bootstrap it all the way.
Exactly. Like the answer is don't sleep. So like, and that's the position I got myself into when Jupiter was in my 10th house. It was like, you know what? Like it was my motto then was like, figure it out, which is like, that's not healthy. It's not healthy when it's like your work day is turning into 18 hours and like you're barely sleeping and your cortisol levels just like through the roof.
Yeah, it's not fun.
No,
where's your Mars?
My Mars is in Taurus. It's
okay.
It's detriment. And it's detriment there. It's also retrograde. So the thing about having Mars in Taurus is it used to be the placement of mine that I hated because I want to be go, go, go. I wanted my Mars to be in its exaltation. I wanted Mars to more identify with the Capricorn stellium that I have. But then I realized that having Mars in Taurus, while it's in detriment though, it means that I'm very precise and I'm very dedicated in how that and how I use my energy. Like I'm not going to expend energy for something that's not worth it. Like I'm going to take my time. I am going to see my energy as an investment. I need an equal exchange. Like I need to know that it's being valued and like what I'm like dedicating myself to. So like I think once I was able to like rebrand in my head what it is to have like a slow Mars, I like learned to really appreciate it. Yeah.
I need help with that because my Mars is in Pisces, and I feel like even wishy-washier about it, my Mars.
You know what
I
I
But
feel
love
like
about
go ahead, Daniel. But I was saying,
oh
as you were talking, I feel like you were healing Shaheen. I could see him being
a
like,
little bit, I was hearing it, and I
whoa,
was
I'm
like,
thinking
this
about
makes
Taurus
sense.
differently. I could
Yeah.
see it.
what I love about a water Mars though is, do you know how water permeates, or water is piercing in the sense that it permeates? Like water will sink into concrete, water will sink into the earth. Water
Yeah.
still goes where it needs to, but it does in a way in which through like osmosis or permeation, or like it sinks. It's not fast, but it'll get there and it'll like go
It
in
doesn't
all the
push.
crevices it needs to be. And like I
Yeah.
think for something like that is really great for the workplace. You're never going to burn bridges. You're never going to be one who like delegates so fiercely and like have people see you as a hothead. You're going
But
to
you're
get
going to
things done.
slowly shift the earth underneath people for
Yes.
years to come.
Yes.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
I'm
That was
obsessed
fun.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things, and we were kind of talking about it earlier, is that you've shifted over the last year. You were freelancing for a while and now you're working kind of full time. I want to get into that a little bit more, but just very briefly, I wanted to talk about like my own experience with that. It's very much that same rhythm that's been going on for me. And our sponsor of the Solstice Series is Magic Mind, which I absolutely love. It's a productivity
Love Magic
elixir.
Mind.
It's a little shot. Yeah, they sent Shaheen and I some product, but essentially over
I need to
the
buy more.
last year, I know I'm running out. Last year I was like, my schedule was so free. I hadn't really ramped up my books as much as a freelancer. Like I actually had a ton of free time. Where this year my schedule is jam-packed, and I really think it's because I've asked for a ton. I've asked for a ton and the universe has fully fucking delivered on that promise. But then that starts to rub up against the Virgo identity in me, which is like, really wants to nail everything. And I actually have to like loosen my grip on everything in order to allow that kind of free flow. And so the reason like Magic Mind has been working so well for me is because I had gotten in the habit of writing like really long to-do lists where I would get to like 3 things maybe on the list, and some days I'd get to nothing on it at all. Where this year it's like I have to do more just to kind of stay on top of everything. And I found that like once I take the Magic Mind, it even when I want to quit, it won't let me quit, if that makes sense. I don't know if you, Shaheen, have had like a similar experience with it, but I'll forget that I took it and I'll take it and like I'll want to be like, okay, I've done 2 things and like want to give myself a little break, but my body will be like, no, you've got a little more in you. I think you can you can do a little bit more, and it's like a joyful moving through that. I don't know what if you've had a similar experience.
Yeah, it's funny you say like it's hard to quit because I quit smoking like several months ago, and I've been chewing nicotine gum for a few months, and I'm done smoking. Don't praise me. I'm fine. I'm working on it still every day. But the thing that I realized was I was drinking Magic Mind every day, and I was like, "Where's my Magic Mind?" in place of my gum. It's not even that kind of. It doesn't give me any. The thing that I like about Magic Mind is that I kept trying to combine different caffeines for like the last few months because I feel like coffee isn't enough now. And I think that coffee with tea sometimes is good, but I've also been trying like caffeine, like supplements and like ashwagandha and like mushrooms magic stuff. But Magic Mind is like a delicious there's something about those like little like shots that feel powerful and also like light and easy.
The moment you said elixir, I'm like, oh, it's an elixir.
Yeah,
like,
and I got in a weird place during the pandemic where I was taking like 15 different supplements, and I realized like, so it has like it has matcha, it has adaptogens like the ashwagandha, it has all the things that I was taking in like these 15 different forms in one little bottle, which I love.
Well, it said a little story on the packaging. It was like, you can use all these different things together and get more energy. And I don't know, I felt like opening up the package was like a little story that I was jumping into and joining.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, we'll have to get you some. But if you are listening today, you can go to magicmind.com/reality. and use the code reality20. And if you use it within the next 10 days from when this episode drops, you get 56% off of your subscription, which is amazing. Or you can use it whenever, reality20 at magicmind.com/reality, and you get 20% off whenever. And Shaheen and I have been like, chatting about, we're like, can we get some more? Because it's literally like we're obsessed with it.
I'm going to buy that. I am someone, I have ADD diagnosed. It was later diagnosed in life because I am someone who would self regulate very well, and told these coping mechanisms. I like hit my 30s and my regular coping mechanisms didn't work anymore. So I like spoke to my doctor about it, and it was like a huge realization, because I'm like, back to our earlier conversation where I'm like, I can't will my way into being more productive. I can't like sit myself at my desk and chain myself to my keyboard and like force productivity. And I was like hitting this wall, and it was just like, a huge unlock when it was like, oh no, like there's just something going on in your
there's something
little noggin.
inside. It also sounds a lot like Taurus Mars. Like, I can't just force it.
Literally, I would
seem to.
And my whole capstellium would be sitting there being like, you only wrote one email today, like you should just like log off forever. And it's just like, okay.
Log off forever. But then your Sag Sun was like, or we could make a cute little meme about it, right?
Yeah,
we could deal with it.
Like I literally made that meme. So I'll send it to you.
Please do.
DM
it. DM it.
Yeah.
I'm curious in terms of, because one of the ways I break it down, and I'm sure, we've talked about it, is the input output. So I'm curious, like, what's inspiring you? Like, what are the inputs? You make the memes, but like, what's coming into you, like from a TV show perspective? Or I feel like I'm going to see live art a lot more again, which is like, I don't know, it's healing my soul. But yeah, I'm curious what your creative inputs are right now, or like what you're seeing out in the world that's inspiring you in some way.
Yeah, that's a great question. Everything. I know it's like huge, but just spending a lot of time online, just looking at things that I have interest in. So like interior design is something that I absolutely love. Plants, nature, like being outside more, and
I'm there with you.
Yeah, it's like I just find like that kind of inspo very mind expanding, because sometimes I feel like when you're someone who's like a graphic designer and you're like working in these confines of like a 1x1 or like a 9x16, or like you have these like borders in which you need to stay in, to go outside and like look how big the sky is, or how expansive a field is, or anything that can really just expand your horizons. To me, it feels like less suffocating, and like that is when my mind can feel a little bit freer to explore.
Totally. Gotta get outside, like, in between all of the bullshit tasks at your desk. You gotta go take your shoes off and put your feet on the ground. Even if it's cement, go do it.
People are always like, touch grass. I'm like, I need to be buried in grass, like physically, like 6 feet under. A TV show that I love right now is Very Important People by Vic Michaelis. It's on this streaming network called Dropout.
Oh my! Heard none of the words you just said.
None of these.
Oh my god, it is so funny. It's basically a bunch of these. She's an interviewer, and she basically gets a bunch of like improv comedians, and they like dress them up in all these prosthetics, and they reveal their prosthetics at the end once they're done, and they have to on the spot make up a character for themselves, and then be in that character for an entire interview. It makes me laugh out loud.
So wait, what is this called again? Say this again.
Very Important People, and it's on like a streaming like network thing called Dropout. But the interviewer is called or the comedian is called Vic Michaelis.
That sounds lovely.
It makes me laugh so hard, like audibly. Like like I'm not a big audible laugher, but when I audibly laugh, it's like wow, this is. But
I love outrageous characters, and I love when people commit to the fucking bit. Like those two things, I think they make my heart sing. And I feel like I got into comedy really young, and like I can see the math behind comedy a lot of the time. Like I've studied comedy forever, so yeah, I think I just appreciate the art of like when people fucking commit to a character. It makes me so happy inside.
100%. I think the creativity that I love to take in the most that inspires me is just that. It's like improv, it's comedy, it's anything that's like very quick-witted, because I think to see, just as you said, like the mechanics or the math behind the person that's like having to be so quick on their feet is like so inspiring, because it's like you just pulled that out of nowhere and it's hilarious.
They
like
channeled
that
it.
is, yeah, you literally have like a little clown inside you that like just makes you like do these hilarious things. Like it is something that truly inspires me so much. I like took my first improv class last summer when I was freelancing, because I was like,
amazing.
and it was like so fun. Everyone there, it was just like the best time. Like,
it's fun once you understand the guidelines, or I don't want to say rules, but like how to yes and whatever. Like
the
it's so much
constraints, which are real.
Yeah,
and
constraints.
We need them.
Yeah, we need that.
Yeah,
100%.
That's. I feel like there's been I don't know if you're a Swiftie at all, Daniel, but like the commentary on the new album is that like, oh, she needs an editor, and it's like, first of all, she doesn't need notes from us at this point, and also, yes, we all need an editor, sort of, right, for art to be its very, very best. But it's like, I don't know, it's kind of interesting when there is no editor, because we can kind of just like see all of it out there, and I bet on the next one it'll be a little bit crisper, a little bit more refined, because of that commentary. I think no one's like immune to that sort of criticism.
Opinions help for me. I like hearing like, edit my work, tell me how to connect more, how can it be stronger. I'm always open.
I need feedback like on stuff like that, because then I like start to spiral internally, where like I am the person who names my files like V1 through like 1,000, because I'm like, I will have an idea mid production or mid design, and then I'll like start a new file, and I'm like, I just need someone to help me like look at all of this, because like there's a lot of ideas here. I just need help like narrowing it down or like refining it, because like I'll just
is an aspiration.
Yes,
final is not real.
I do the opposite. I make it final because I want it to like V2. I always write final, because I'm like, we're not doing more than this. Like, this is enough. I try to like cut off the stream there.
I only got so many versions in me.
I want to dive into your chart a little bit. We've talked about, so you are Sagittarius Sun, Aquarius Moon. Do you feel, I do want to talk about your Aquarius Moon there for a second. As you said, you can kind of like, you can drift a little bit like in the work. How else do you kind of see, and that's, it's more internal. How do you feel about that Aquarius energy in your life? Are you flaky at all in any of your relationships, or how do you see that some of those tropes, I guess, surface?
Yeah, great question. So with my Aquarius Moon, and I feel like this context helps, it's in my 8th house, right? So when it comes to the relation of my moon in the 8th house, I think, and on top of it being an Aquarius and air moon, I will always intellectualize my emotions rather than feel them. And that can be my downfall at times, because I will equate over analyzing my emotions as processing, and that's not the fact. That's not the case. Like, I should be the one to actually like let them sit with me, to process them and like feel them, and then like let them go. But I'll be like, yeah, the reason you felt that way is because this happened, and the reason that happened is because of that, and like that ultimately resulted in the emotion that you felt. Done. And like that's,
and that just like, spirals. Like it's just a spiral. It never processes when we analyze our emotions instead of feeling them. That's what I learned through therapy.
An Aquarius, insane. So my partner is an Aquarius rising, and the other night we're both sitting on the couch, a little bit stoned, and we just kind of start talking about, and this has never occurred to me, because I'm very, very positive, like, and I think, we feel our emotions, and I think anger definitely has like a place in my life. Sad is a place I think of that I go visit. Like, I intentionally tap into different emotions for different reasons at different time, but I like to sit in like contentment. I wouldn't say like ecstatic pure joy, but I like to sit in like a this is enough, this feels good kind of place. So we started to, this is what I was talking about with the Aquarian energy. We started thinking about how our brains are just like chemical factories, and how like you can depend on external things, but then sometimes like everything we do is just, we're all just drug addicts. Everything we do is like chemical, whether good, whether bad. Like, we're just trying to touch this chemical release in our brains over and over and over again through like different methods. And I just felt like I was like, that is sad. Like we got to that point and I was like, I didn't want to think about this that hard, but it's such an Aquarius thing to just like peel back every layer to get to like, it's just chemicals. Like I'm like, okay.
And I mean, it's so Aquarius that you broke it down to like the actual like literal mechanism that's happening. It's like, it's not just an emotion, like it's a reaction due to like chemicals in your brain. Like you're not sad. There's just a lot of sad like little chemicals in your brain.
There's a sad liquid rotating around in there.
And you got to drink happy liquid to get rid of the sad liquid. I feel like another trait of like the Aquarius too is like, especially with the moon, is since it's like the sign of like the collective or just at least like, you know, larger groups, I'll oftentimes like think of other people's emotions or reaction and value them more than my own. And that's tough because it's like trying to weigh, and that's also why I mentioned the 8th house, because it's like shared resources. It's like ways in which we merge together, ways in which we come to one place to like share amongst each other, and like being in an emotional exchange with like your friend groups or whatever. Like I will then prioritize others more because the 8th house is a hidden house. I'm going to be hiding my emotions more because I want to make space for another, because I prioritize them more above me. But like that always doesn't make like a good, healthy relationship dynamic. So all these things in which like working through in therapy, shout out my therapist, when he's like, you need to learn to feel your emotions, not like overanalyze them. I'm like, that's what therapy is for, my guy.
That's why I'm paying you, sir.
Literally,
thanks.
That's what the money's for. And he's so great. He understands astrology. So that was like, this is the first
helpful.
First therapist I've ever been to who understands astrology. And I'm like, I'm not always astrologizing my life and emotions, but like if I can just say like, oh, I had this reaction because I'm like, my Venus is in Capricorn, like I don't get a weird look from him and be like, he gets that, and then I can just immediately then go into
to be able
what
to
I was going to
explain it. And have
it's a framework again, and it's a framework that he gets, and so it allows you to show up authentically, not like, oh, hold on, I have to pretend I'm not woo-woo in this space where I'm supposed to be getting better. Like that's not the process, right?
Oh my God. When I first started going to therapy, I was like, I cannot mention astrology or like rituals, or because they are going they're going to throw me in a river. They're going to burn me at the stake. Like I will get committed
so hard. They're going to pop out of their head.
This guy's not allowed to be here.
Actually, like we're going to take you to a different room that has
we're gonna have to take away your phone in this room. And I mean, thinking about that and like the feeling of the emotions of others a little bit more, I think we can wrap up on your nodes. I'd love to talk about your nodes. So your north node is in Capricorn, which you have a ton in Capricorn, but your south node, that means, is in Cancer, where your moon is. And so I find that really interesting, and even over the course of this conversation, those themes are like in interplay quite a bit. Is like you have a lot of emotions, you feel those emotions, but sometimes they're deeper rooted, and perhaps some of what you're here to do is not let those emotions like dictate, like feel them but not dictate kind of the path, and allow yourself to still like progress forward without letting those emotions kind of like run the show, so to speak. Does that track a little bit with what you're feeling?
Yes, and it's tough because, as you mentioned, like my south node is in Cancer with my Chiron and my ascendant. So there's already like some like wounding there around, you know, very much first house topic themes of like self, identity, plus like having my south node there of like a place that is like a dumping out, a release. So there's like clearly, I think what I was intended to hear to be like to release any of like traumas that might, or not traumas, but like wounds that I might have experienced or have about like myself, my person, the way that I show up in this world. And having the north node in the 7th with this huge stellium, it's, I think, learning to prioritize the ways in which like we can build partnership with people that still honors yourself. So thinking of like the south node, not losing sense of self when you engage in partnership, which is the 7th house. So like you have a duty to yourself to like advocate for yourself, to have an equal energetic exchange, to show up like equally and like balanced without letting the north node run away and like dominating over you and being swept away in other people's priorities and other people's like ulterior motives. So I think that's the balance in which that I've been like thinking through. And we mentioned Pluto leaving Cap, and Pluto Pluto touched every single personal planet in my 7th house stellium, which includes like Venus, Mercury, and then outer planets like Uranus and Neptune, my North Node, my Saturn. Pluto went over every single one of these planets and had a conjunction with them from 2008 until this year. And the way I journaled about this a lot is I think what that taught me was, you know, with Pluto, it's power dynamics, it's struggle, it's deconstruction. Through that time, it was a lot of obviously my like career and my working and like dating history and stuff like that. I would often self-sacrifice in partnership to reach like a homeostasis. Yeah, to keep a balance, to keep things like okay, to like I would be the first to be like, okay, well, I'll compromise or like I'll let it go, and like I wouldn't show up for myself.
And
especially in the workplace.
It's hard. Mutability is really we can be boundaryless a little bit because we're like, well, we can make it work, but how long can we keep doing that without chipping away pieces of our soul? Yeah. And I think we find that out in our 30s. Like, I think we can actually really successfully do it for our teens and our 20s. And I think I did, and I'm sure you did too. We actually could force ourselves to do the thing we didn't want to do because it behooved everyone involved, right? But then I think after Saturn return, it becomes a lot more difficult to do that.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, it's like you need boundaries, you need structure, you need restrictions, like you need all those things in which when we're younger, we're like, that's just being mean and saying no. It's like, no, that's like actually advocating for yourself. And
take care of little you, and they deserve
that.
Yeah.